Hi, fifth graders, it's Mrs. Turner, and we are going to learn how to round decimal numbers to the hundredths place value. So we're going to rewind to fourth grade and kind of review our whole number rounding, something that we did actually both in third and fourth grade. And we're going to use that to help us to round in our decimal. Okay, so just to review, if we had the number 124, so I'm going to be rounding 124. I'm going to put the 100 in 100 in the hundreds. The 20 would be 2 tens and then 4 ones, right? So this is going to help me to round. Now let's say that I'm rounding to the tens place value. Okay, so that would be this place value. Another way to think about this number is this number 1 in front of it would move here, and that would be like 10 tens, right? This could be thinking of 10 tens, which is that 100. So I'm going to add those to this column, and I'm actually going to think of it as 12 tens, right? And 12 tens is 120, right? So that would be my baseline number, 120. And then if I add 10 to that, so I'm adding that place value tens because I'm rounding to the tens place value. I'm going to add 10 to my baseline number, and then I'm going to get 130. So 124 lives between the two numbers, 120 and 130. What we want to do is we want to figure out what's right in the middle, what is known as the midpoint. So that's pretty easy with a whole number such as 120 and 130. I know that between 20 and 30 is 25. So between 120 and 130 would live 125. So that would be directly in the middle, my midpoint. Now I like this curved line because I can think of it as like a ball. So if I'm moving up here, if my ball was anywhere on this side of the midpoint, so less than 125, I would be rolling back down to 120, so it'd be closer to 120. Anything that lives on the other side of the midpoint would be rolling down towards 130, so it'd be closer to 130. So let's place 124, and I know that like between 120 and 125, there'd be 121, 122, 123, 124. I'm going to go ahead and write all of those lines, those 4 lines in there to show the exact place where 124 would live. And this would be 124, right below that 125. And this would be like 126, 127, 128, 129 would live over there. So 124 is going to roll back down towards 120, so it would be closer to 120. So if I was rounding that 124 to the nearest tens, then it would round to 120. On your assessment assignment, you're going to see your number line looking like this. So I prefer the number line with the midpoint being the high point. That way it's easy to see, oh, lower rolls back down and higher rolls back up, right? Well, rolls down to the upper number. So in this one, we would start with that 124, knowing that that would be 12 tens. And then 12 tens is 12 times 10, which we should know is 120. Right, so that would be our baseline number. Since it's rounding to the nearest 10, I'm going to add 10 to that number to figure out what the other number is. That would be 130. And then our midpoint would be right here, 125. Okay, and so again, between 120 and 125 would be 124. So there's 121, 122, 123. Here would be 124. And then above that would be 126, 127, 128, and 129, right? So what we can see is that, in fact, 124 is closer to 120. So if we're rounding 124 to the tens place value, I would be rounding it to 120. That is our review from fourth grade. And now we're going to do our fifth grade number. So we want to start with a fresh place value chart. and our fresh number lines here. And we are going to start with a decimal that is a pretty large decimal. And we're going to figure out where does it round to in multiple different ones. So our number is going to be 263 and 748 thousandths. So remember, 263, 2 hundredths, 6 tens, 3 ones. 748 thousandths. That means the 8 is in the thousands, and we would have 4 hundredths and 7 tenths. And here is where my decimal is, and I need to make sure that it gets in my number there. All right, let's start off by rounding it to, they're going to have us round on your paper. It's going to be like they want you to round to the hundredths, and then tenths, and then like ones or tens after that. So they kind of go in that order. So let's start with the hundredths. Let's do that. And this is our hundredths right here. We have to know where that place value is. So just like I did with the 124, where I found that place value, and then I thought, oh, that's how many hundredths it is. This would be 26,374 hundredths, right? You can kind of think 26 right here, 374 hundredths. Or what we can do is we can think that would be with our decimal in here. We're going to end in this place value. So what I'm really going to do is I'm just going to think I don't need this place value there. I can put like a 0 there, and that's going to be my baseline number. So here, I'm going to put 263.74 because I'm ending in my hundredths. So that would be my baseline number. Right? I'm ending in my hundredths place value. But in order to figure out if I add one more hundredth to that, so I'm adding one more hundredth, that would end in a 5, right? What comes after 74? 75. So if you're thinking about money, this would be $263.74. A penny would be our hundredth, so add one more penny to that, and I would have 263.75 hundredths, right? So I would have 75 cents. So what is the midpoint though? So you're thinking, what am I going to put in between those two values? So what's really helpful is to actually add that 0 in the thousandths place, and then I can see that this would be between 740 thousandths and 750 thousandths. So I know that between 740 and 750 is 745. So I know that would be 745 thousandths, right? So the decimal, and in front of the decimal, we have the whole number 263. Okay, so if we could cut a penny in half, then that's what that half would be right there, that 5 thousandths. Okay, so now we need to figure out where does 263 and 748 thousandths go, right? So thinking about this would be 741, 742, 743, 744 thousandths. Here's 745, so here would be 746, 747, 748, 749. So right here would be 263, the whole number, and 748 thousandths, right, our number here. And then I can establish that our ball would roll back down towards this number, 263 and 750 thousandths. But we're not going to round it to thousands, we're rounding it to hundredths. So we're going to take off the 0 at the end because it's not necessary, right? Just like if I put a 0 in the thousands place value in front of the 200, I already know that there's nothing there. They don't need to put that there. So what does that look like on the other number line? So we can think if we're going to the nearest hundredths, right? We're going to start with our 4 as being our baseline number. So 263 and 74 hundredths. So looking at that number to help us figure out where we're going to start. And then we're adding one more hundredth, so one more penny if it was money. And we would end at 263 and 75 hundredths. And finding the midpoint is the hardest part. So we're going to actually add a 0 to our thousandths. So I can think of this as 740 thousandths versus 750 thousandths. So then this would be 263 and 745 thousandths to help us figure that out. I know that 748 thousandths would be more than that. So this is where 263 and 748 thousandths would be. And then I would round up to this one. I don't need this 0 in the thousandths because I'm going to the hundredths place value. So if I'm rounding to the hundredths, so if I'm rounding 263 and 748 thousandths to the nearest hundredths, it would be 263 and 75 hundredths. So we want to make sure that we're ending in that place value, the hundredths place value. Okay, so our next one is what if instead we're rounding to the tenths? So looking at our tenths place value, that would be 7/10, right? So we're going to be thinking of our number, our baseline number would be that 263. And then we're going to just use the 7/10. That would be our baseline. And then we're going to add 1/10 to that. And then that would be 7 plus 1 more would be 8/10, right? So we have 263 and 8/10 is our other number. So we're looking between those two numbers for where does our number live. So we need to find the midpoint. So what we can do again is instead of just having 7/10, we can put input zeros, right, for these. And I can either put 1 0 or 2 zeros. It doesn't matter, but I could just put 1 0. Right, and then that would be my midpoint between 70 and 80 would be 75. So then I would have 263, the whole number, and 75 hundredths. If I decided to add another 0, right, I would be between 700 and 800, and that would be 750. So we still can use it either way. I'm not going to put an extra 0 there. Okay, and so now I know where my midpoint is, and I have to figure out where does this go. So I'm just going to look in our hundredths. Our hundredths is 74, right? So what is more? 74, 75. So the 74 would be back here, right? And this would be 263 and 748, right? It might be more helpful if you don't really understand that to leave this as 263 and 700 thousandths, and this would be 800 thousandths, and then this would be 750. So where would 748 be? That would be right below that 750 thousandths, right? So I'm going to be rolling back down towards this number, but I want to end this number in the tenth, so it would be 263